Evening all, welcome to the Pyramid Podcast, where three lads discuss all things on the English football pyramid. On today's episode, we'll have a review of England's performance in the international break, preview the weekend's Premier League games, plus key fixtures from wider EFL. We'll reflect on two 3-2 wins for the mighty Glovers and finish with everyone's favourite podcast game, Spin the Wheel. I'm your host, Alex Murphy, and once again, I'm joined by Tom Lawrence and Tom Gallagher. Boys, we'll start with England. Laura, what do you make of the three lions against Scotland, Ukraine?
Well, I'll start with Scotland because I watched that game and I thought we were brilliant. And I think all over the pitch, we made it what I think is quite a good Scotland team at the minute, who have been winning lots of games and are almost qualified, aren't they, for the Euros next year already? Look very ordinary. And there was a lot of talk, particularly on Talksport, about there's a few rogue shouts coming out like Billy Gilmore being better than Jude Bellingham, which I think's been well and truly nipped in the bud after Tuesday night's performance. And I'll quickly just, I'm sure we'll all want to have a word on him, but Jude Bellingham, I think, is the first player I've ever known, other than outside of your Ronaldo's and Messi's, to just be widely regarded with no negative comments whatsoever. I think everyone just sees him as the next generational talent. What a wonderful footballer he is, and thank God he's English. So that's one good thing to come out of it. I didn't watch the Ukraine game because the Oval game kicked off at 3 and the Ukraine was 5 o'clock, and these days the league games at Yeovil were like 110 minutes. So by the time it had finished, it was like deep into the second half. But I think a point in Poland against an emotionally charged Ukraine setup isn't the end of the world. I do think it seems like a bit of a catalyst for Southgate outers or anti-Southgaters to come and have their say because we've drawn 1-1 to the Ukraine. But where we are in the group, I think that was an absolutely fine result. So no problems with that, even though I didn't watch the game, so maybe we were poor. But against Scotland, I really liked Jude Bellingham in the 10 with KP and Rice sat in behind him. I know people will have their thoughts on whether someone who isn't playing an awful lot of football should be in the team. And then that brings us on to Harry Maguire as well, who obviously had a bit of a sticky night, the latest in a long line for him. So yeah, I think fine. I think we look good. I'm happy that I think England are the best international team in the world. If I'm honest with you, it's going to be our time to win the tournament in the Euros next year. I haven't seen anything to take my brain away from that, take my thinking away from that, and yeah, I don't look forward to the next international break. But when it comes, I'm sure we'll be back in the points.
Tomo?
Yeah. Completely agree with the majority of what Laura said. I think the biggest thing we learn over especially the Ukraine game, and Southgate hopefully has learned this lesson, is basically how not to play Bellingham and Maddison. And they kind of played like this dual centre mid / left wing position, so that they like switched quite a lot, and it didn't work. Which is, I think it's a bit harsh on Maddison, really. He started the season so well for Tottenham, and then you play him in a left wing position that's just not his position. And I think what we learned actually about Jude Bellingham, or what I learned especially, is that he thrives and plays best when he's sort of playing alongside two not defensive minded midfielders, but midfielders who will give him that freedom to maraud forward. And he was class, wasn't he? And sort of levels above the Scottish midfield. And the Scottish midfield aren't, I mean, obviously we are levels above Scotland as a nation, but the Scottish midfield are quite good. They've got McGinn, McTominay, Gilmore, I think McGregor. But yeah, he was just head and shoulders above everyone. And I think what I learned most was that we probably need KP to get some minutes because I thought he looked good against Scotland. I know it's the opposition, etc., but I thought he looked good, and he provided a lot more balance to that midfield than you had Henderson play there on Saturday, which didn't work, and I don't think will work going forward, because over the course of the next 12 months, or will it be 8 months until the next Euros, he'll be playing in Saudi Arabia and slowly but surely fading into retirement. So whether or not that means, for England anyway, for England's sake, potentially KP gets a move in January and then gets some minutes ahead of the Euros, or someone else comes in. But Yeah, that's the sort of biggest takeaway I got from the games was Bellingham and how best to use him, because at the minute he's up there with Kane as our best player.
Yeah, on the midfield, I was actually really impressed with Calvin Phillips, and my thoughts before were him and Maguire shouldn't be near England squads, or in maybe not squads, maybe that's a bit harsh, but not near getting game time because they're not starting for their clubs. But actually, if Bellingham's going to play 10 and not be the other sitter with Rice, there needs to be a second midfielder. And if that's not KP, then who is it? And I get that he's not getting game time at City or hasn't so far, but remember, Pep sometimes takes a year with players before starting to play them too often. I know he got less than most in regards to minutes last year, and he's not started as if he is getting them this year, but he's going to be in Man City training for the whole season. So technically he's going to be at it. He's going to be up with the pace of play in regards to training. Whether he will move or not, I don't think he will. I actually think he will take this whole year thinking he can win more trophies and hopefully have the self-confidence to get into the team. And if he's going to be part of that City squad all summer, I wouldn't bank on KP not starting in the Euros, especially if Bellingham's now going to play 10.
Because the only thing, because what before this 2 week international break, I basically thought that our best 11 or our best midfield would be Declan Rice holding in the Rodri position if you're in a sort of in the City formation, and then you've got Foden playing in a sort of dual tens with Bellingham. That's what I thought. But basically that's wishful thinking, really, isn't it? Under Gareth Southgate, because he's a safety first manager, and he's proven that over his last, I think over his last 5 years as England manager. So basically, it's going to be Bellingham as our number 10, as our forward thinking midfielder, and then we've got and maybe that's the best thing for Bellingham, because he certainly played much better against Scotland than he did against Ukraine, given the freedom. And what I'd like to see is basically Saka right, Rashford left, Kane up top, and Bellingham in behind, and then you've got Rice and one other. And obviously, it's looking like it will probably be KP, but that's all dependent on whether or not it gets minutes. And then I suppose the only other situation to think about would be Maguire. Now, that was a calamity. I know, like it was a bit unlucky, perhaps, but you could argue that if Colwill comes on instead of him, a left-footed centre half, a bit quicker, a little bit more mobile, he just cuts that cross out. Maguire looked like, let's be honest, it might have been unlucky, but he looked laboured, didn't it? And I just thought Southgate, you're making a rod for your own back there when you're bringing Maguire on at Hampden Park. You know the Scottish fans are going to batter him. Why do that? And like, as soon as the goal goes in, I'm rubbing my hands together because I'm thinking, right, get on the memes, because Twitter's going mental. And it's just, I don't know. It seems like everything he touched turns to shite at the minute, it's unlucky for him. And it'll be interesting to see how that sort of situation moves forward as the season progresses.
Yeah. There's a saying in football, or probably in life actually, that they only boo the good players. Like when Yeovil played Man United and Rooney, I think he played centre mid that day, everyone boos him. And it's a common thing at football grounds, isn't it? That if there's a big player on the other team, he always gets booed. And it's almost like Harry Maguire against Scotland. I don't know if this has been happening at Man United, but that every time he touched the ball, that goading of him is almost as if to say, "You are shit." I've never heard that before at a football match, and I think that's why it's picked up so much traction since. And he probably wouldn't like to hear it, but there's been a lot of pity for him, and I do feel for him as a human being, because no one wants to be.
Have to edit that.
Are
Go
we,
again. All
are we
right.
still here?
Yeah, go again. Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know where I got.
You basically said that you were just saying that as Maguire as a human, he had a level of pity.
He's disappeared again.
Yeah, I'll just edit it when he comes back on. We'll just
Yeah,
carry
so
on
that's
Maguire back.
What do you reckon that was 10 minutes in?
Yeah, I reckon about that.
Yeah.
What's this then?
He's back.
You back, Laurie?
Is that just me then? Is it?
Yeah, you just like disappeared off the Zoom.
Right. What was I saying? Something about Maguire.
Yeah, you said that Maguire was a level of pity.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Right.
Pity.
Okay. Are we recording still?
yeah, I'll just edit it out.
Right. This is what I want to say about Maguire. I've got a lot of I feel sorry for him, right? But I was saying to Tigo just before we come on today, I think he's made a little bit of a rod for his own back because he isn't getting enough minutes at Man United to get out of this hole that he's in, that he's become a little bit of, I don't want to say a joke, but a meme or a bit of a running catastrophe of a player. And football's a fickle sport in a bad way, but it can be in a good way as well. So when you're in a position like him, if you go on an 8, 9, 10 game run of being really solid and playing really well, then all of a sudden people will forget about that and he'll be lauded as a good centre back again and probably be accepted as one of England's first choice centre backs. But he ain't going to get that at United. And fair enough, over the last couple of seasons, he's tried to win his place back. But I thought in the summer, it was very, very obvious with Eric Ten Hag that he wasn't going to be getting those games. And it feels like he had a chance to go to West Ham and didn't. And I just think that was a bit of a mistake. Now, it might be that it was out of his control and fair play if it wasn't. But from the outside looking in, it feels like he had an opportunity to go and didn't. And now the only time he's really going to play is when United have got 3 or 4 injuries or when Gareth Southgate chucks him in at somewhere like Hampden Park. And then you saw what happened. So I do feel sorry for him, but I do think, probably between Maguire and Gareth Southgate, they've made the problems themselves a little bit.
Yeah, and I think with Maguire, I completely agree that he should have gone to West Ham in the summer if that was a viable move. I think with Maguire, he was almost doomed from the minute Man United agreed 80 million with Leicester. And I know people have touched on this before. Van Dijk was 75, so suddenly he became the most expensive defender in the world. Van Dijk had those years at Liverpool where he was absolutely Rolls Royce unbelievable. Maguire isn't that. He was never going to be that. Leicester didn't need to sell him, but United paid what they needed to get him in. Ever since then, he's been targeted about his performances. And I just wonder if United had paid 30 million for him and he started for England.
Yeah, Murph, can I jump in quickly? So we're forgetting though, aren't we, that during that summer, City were in for him as well, and so was Pep Guardiola. Okay, you are right in saying we overpaid for him, but basically United have overpaid for every single player for the last 10 years. And actually, I don't think Maguire started off badly at United. He had a couple of good seasons. Do you remember when he was injured for the Europa League final and all hell broke loose? We were like, well, we're not going to win it now because Maguire's injured, and we didn't win it anyway. But it was basically last season he didn't play. The season before he played every game and he was terrible. But so was United. It was so.
Yeah, what my point is that his fee is now used, isn't it? It's like, oh, Harry Maguire, an £80 million fridge, which is terrible. Yeah. I know, but if he was 30 mil and he was 4th choice at United, but playing in Europe games or League Cup games and stuff like that, I don't think there'd be this level of scrutiny that he'd be getting. I don't think all of this social media campaign would have built up. I don't think he'd be getting the kind of ironic kind of boos and then the pity sings from England fans that he's getting. I just think he'd be a run-of-the-mill player who people sometimes would question maybe isn't good enough for England. But this is more he was 80 mil. He's, at the time, I'm not sure if he still is, was most expensive defender of all time. And he's nowhere near that. So that's what I mean by he was doomed from that first minute. He did start really well for United. Yeah,
I do agree. In some senses, especially with becoming the most expensive defender on the planet, you're making got a target on your back, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think it's just a case of a player has lost his confidence and lost his form, and rather than being able to play through it, Eric Ten Hag came in, took him out the team, and he's never been able to play through it. Whereas you get players who sort of they dip in form now and again, and they play through it, and then they come on the other side, and they're playing well again. But he's just not been given that chance. And Laurie, you are completely right. And let's be honest, he had that chance to play or to go and play and for West Ham this summer, and he seems to have not taken it. We don't know the ins and outs of why that transfer collapsed, whether it is his fault, United's fault, or West Ham's. But I don't know. It's a difficult one. My sort of hope as an England fan is that Colwill continues to impress at Chelsea and he eventually becomes that sort of left-sided centre-half alongside Stones. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, what you've just said there is bang on. You're only as good as your last game, and Harry Maguire's last game always seems to be a calamitous one. But he's only getting 1 out of 20 fixtures.
Yeah.
So, like you said, he's not being able to play through it and build his stock back up, and that's what he needs to leave. But just on centre-backs quickly, I thought Lewis Dunk was really impressive the other night.
Yeah.
And I think, looking forward to the Euros, especially, I loved his quotes about De Zerbi. He said something about, like, I've learned how to play football all over again. And normally when you get a player that, I think that was his second cap, that comes into the England team, you can tell they're not happy to be there, but they don't want to make mistakes. He looked really confident, commanding, and looked settled, I thought, at the back there. So if he carries on has a really, really good season, I think he's going to be possibly, between him and Colwill, I would imagine at the moment, starting in the Euros next year. He looks really, really good.
He was so good. And you know what he does for Brighton, where he sort of holds the ball and draws players into him, and then he plays through the lines, and that's exactly what he did against Scotland. And it's so valuable as a centre mid or a striker, where you're sort of receiving the ball with time and space, because he's literally holding the ball, and then they draws the defenders in, draws the defender or attackers in, and then boom, he plays. I was really impressed with him. I think his last England cap was like 5 years ago or something. Yeah. And you are right. He's like a different player under De Zerbi. He's unreal.
Right, boys, let's just finish this England segment here then. So I'm going to say there's one centre-back and one midfield position up for grabs for the Euros. Who is starting with Stones at centre-half and with Rice in midfield in the first group game?
Well, if I was manager, it would be Colwill and probably KP at the minute.
Lauro?
Yeah. I just want to say, really, really impressed with KP. He didn't play hardly any games last season. He comes in and performs like that. So even if he has the same sort of season this year, maybe he can just do it. Maybe like England's his club and City's his international team, because I think he's like started 4 and 4 for both in the last year. But I'm going to go KP as well. And yeah, probably Cole, just because I like the left foot.
Yeah.
Balance in the centre-back position.
Yeah, I love it as well, yeah.
Yeah, full house. I'll agree with you there, but it wouldn't surprise me if it is Maguire come the tournament. But yeah, I'm backing KP to be starting. Right, boys, Prem's back then, thank God. We'll start with a lunchtime kickoff on Saturday. So Wolves host Liverpool. Wolves obviously not got off to a great start, but scored 2 at Palace, albeit losing, and 1 at Everton. However, Liverpool got 10 points from 4 games. Salah, Diaz, Nunez all scoring. Lauro, see anything other than an away win there?
This is my mindset with Liverpool at the minute, right? On one hand, they've had a really good start to the season, and they've been playing difficult fixtures as well. Like they've had Villa, they've had Newcastle, they've had Chelsea. So you've got to praise them for that. But for some reason, I just feel like I'm waiting for them to hit a bump in the road, because I don't have the same kind of faith in this team of Klopp's Liverpool of years gone by, of Salah, Mane, Firmino, Van Dijk in his pomp at the back, that engine in midfield. So I guess they just need to we need to see more of them, certainly from a neutral fan's perspective, to see them as real challengers again, and think of a fixture away at Wolves as them just blowing them away, as I would have thought probably 2 or 3 years ago. So I think Liverpool will win, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Whether Wolves are the team to start that bump in the road and a bad run of form for Liverpool, I'm not sure, because although I think Gary O'Neill's quite a decent manager, who's been quite impressive over the last year, and Wolves haven't been too bad this season, they've only got 3 points, and the reason they're not picking up points is the age-old one that they're not really scoring any goals. And if they are scoring goals like they did at Palace, they're conceding 3 at the other end, which you can't do against the likes of Liverpool. So yes, probably a Liverpool win, but not a slam dunk, in my opinion.
Tomo?
Yeah, so for me, I obviously did a little bit of like stats research before we come on the pod, and every stat that you read makes you think, yeah, Liverpool will win this, but for some reason, I've got a rogue prediction. I just think Wolves will win it, just sneak through. I think they're going to win 2-1. And the reason is this. They won the fixture last year 3-0. Jose Sarr has made the most saves, or the second most saves in the Premier League this season, so he's obviously in good form. And obviously he'll be needed on Saturday. They've got the most dribbles in the Premier League this season, most successful dribbles, Wolves, so they'll be good on the counter-attack. But other than that, I just got a feeling that Wolves will do it. I agree with Loro, and the stats back him up in terms of Wolves' terrible finishing. Their shot accuracy is 27.4%, which is the 17th in the league, which is terrible, obviously. And they last won consecutive matches against Liverpool in the 1981. So most would sort of read those stats and go, yeah, Liverpool are going to win. But for some reason, I just fancy Wolves. So I've gone 2-1 in my predictions.
Yeah, I'll go for a less sort of statistical approach, and I'll say Salah, Diaz, Nunes 4-0. I don't really give Wolves much of a sniff there. They're terrible in front of goal. They've not been particularly miserly at the back. Liverpool have made, I think we said last time, a sneakily good start. They got a couple of other tough fixtures to come in the upcoming game weeks, but they've started brilliantly. I think they're now kind of favourites to, alongside Arsenal, to be the main challenge to City, and I don't see them slipping up there at lunchtime. So yeah, I fancy Liverpool to
Oh, you back, Murph?
Yeah, I'm back. Did I go there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Where did I cut off?
You fancy Liverpool to
And I said, you got Salah, Diaz, Nunes, or yeah?
It was
Yeah,
right at the end.
Right at the
Oh,
end.
okay, cool. Yeah, I fancy them to get all three. From an FPL point of view, got Diaz in my team. Anything for you, boys?
No, I've actually taken out Trent in my wild card this week. I'm just fed up of spending that much money on him, and he's an injury doubt, isn't he? So I've taken him out. I did want some Liverpool coverage, but Salah is too expensive to get. But yeah, obviously you want Salah in your team, don't you? Really?
I've got Luis Diaz, but everyone seems to have him. I'm just so bored of looking at that crap team that I fielded in FPL. I think I'm going to ring the changes and probably take some minus points because I just hate looking at every single one of them. I just want them to get out of my sight.
Right, boys, we'll move on then to personally what I think is the biggest fixture of the weekend. United at home to Brighton. United are actually above evens at home against Brighton, which probably got to be a first in that fixture. Tomo, some news that's come out this afternoon though about Jadon Sancho.
Yeah. So United have just announced that he is training away from the first team while that disciplinary issue is resolved, which basically means that what has him and Ten Hag been doing for 10 days if they've not been able to resolve that issue?
What's happened is Jadon Sancho has had that Barney put that Twitter post and Instagram post up and then flew out to America to be at a birthday party of an NBA star alongside Wan-Bissaka. Now, for Aaron, that's absolutely fine. He's played, I think, pretty much every game for United this season. Isn't currently in the England setup, and I think he's looking at whether he can play elsewhere internationally. But for Jadon, that's pretty unforgivable for me, just jetting off. I'd be in at Carrington that next day and trying to win people over.
Yeah, if it was me and I'd been called out by the manager on the Sunday for not training well enough, I would stick around Manchester and I'd be in the club, whether I'm doing my own fitness stuff, just keeping fit. That's what I'd be doing. And actually spoke to Laurie before the podcast about this. I'll just side with Ten Hag on it. Like the manager sets the standards of training. So if he comes out, whether or not it was the right or wrong thing to do and come out and do it publicly, given Sancho's sort of I guess he's the type of player who needs an arm around the shoulder instead of sort of a public battering, but not a battering. But so, yeah, but obviously Ten Hag, it feels like that was Ten Hag's final straw. And like to come out publicly and say, look, he's not trained well enough, so that's why he's not playing. And it feels like Sancho has come across terribly, in my opinion, since then. The emotional statement, a little bit all over the place, in my opinion. And then to one, he didn't take it down. Two, he pinned it. So he pinned it on his Twitter feed, which obviously meant he doubled down on it. And then eventually, I think a couple of days ago, he has deleted it. His head's all over the place. Obviously, he's had some issues over the last 12 months or 18 months. So I shouldn't really go too hard on him, because obviously he is a human being after all. So there might be something going on that we don't all know about. But in terms of football only, you've got to side with Ten Hag with it. And I think it's sort of like the beginning of the end, really, with Sancho.
And Loro, on to the fixture then. Obviously, United at home against Brighton, but Brighton got 9 points from 12. Obviously, Evan Ferguson scored a hat-trick in the last game against Newcastle. What's your thoughts on that fixture?
I think Brighton will win. I looked at that. You'll be shocked to hear. I looked at the odds on this game earlier, and United are favourites. They're like evens, and I think Brighton are 2-1. I just think if that fixture was Team A against Team B, and then you looked at the stats, or I hate the stats, but the trajectory and travel and momentum of both clubs and the way that they're both playing, you'd have that down as a Brighton win. But because it's Man United against Brighton, money always comes for United. And Teagle did surprise me earlier, actually, and said the last time Man United lost at home was against Brighton in the Premier League, which was right at it might have even been the first game of last season. So obviously it's not a foregone conclusion that Brighton will win, but I think they will. But can I just say on the Jadon Sancho thing, just to stick up for him a little bit, Teagle summed it up there when he said, I'm siding with Ten Hag, or I think you need to side with Ten Hag. No one should be siding with anyone, because no one should have any kind of insight into this. Ten Hag never had to bite at that question, and as soon as he did, he's opened up this massive can of worms. And what's Jadon Sancho done this week? He's been the bigger man, and he's taken it down. And now it's coming out that he's training the reserves. No one needs to know that. I know Ten Hag's got standards. I know he dropped Rashford because he was 30 seconds late to a meal or something last year. That's fine. We don't need to know anything about that. You've opened this can of worms with your poor management against a young lad who's already lacking confidence. We've gone over this before, but I just wanted to stick up for Jadon a bit there, because I think Erik ten Hag's opened a can of worms he didn't need to. So well done, Eric. Good management. And I fancy you to get thumped against Brighton at the weekend.
Right. Tomo, maybe try and come in for a bit of a United view then. What's your thoughts on the game and where the result will land?
Well, I predict a Brighton win.
Great.
I know we've been unbeaten at Old Trafford since that Brighton defeat in the opening day of last season. But Brighton have got a good record against United. They've won the last 3 in the league against us with an aggregate score of 7-1. They top the table for in stats. I know you love these stats, Loro. In goals, expected goals, shots on target, and shot accuracy. They top the table for XG as well. So yeah, basically, they look good. I do predict goals because they have conceded quite a few chances, Brighton, this year. And United have obviously made a few, conceded a few. But it just seems like it's going to be a tough couple of games for United with Bayern in the week. I think it's Bayern away in the week. And it's not been the best of international breaks, like we're talking about with this Sancho stuff. Obviously, Antony's not at the club anymore, albeit temporarily, while he's dealing with these issues in Brazil. I just Brighton look good, don't they? It's just, as a United fan, it's pretty depressing stuff, to be honest.
Also with United, I wrote down, I tried to put together a bit of a team for United. I have no idea who's fit, who's available, who's playing where, who's considered for what position. I'm just looking here. You've got Ahmad out injured, Kobe Mainu out injured, who maybe wouldn't be starting. But then you got Malacia, Shaw, Varane, Antony's obviously inactive. Amrabat's questionable. Lissandro Martinez is questionable. Mason Mount's questionable. So you look at that and you think, I couldn't tell you what the side's going to be. Like, so let's take right wing as an example, Tomo. Who's United's right winger now? They're saying about, oh, Palestri should get some minutes. He's young and raw and got talent. Saying Garnacho might play out there, but he prefers from the left. Mason Mount, our centre midfield signing, could go out there. Our most creative player in 10, Bruno, will probably end up out there. Just general thoughts on that?
Yeah, that position's cursed, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's basically cursed. But yeah, I do think for this game in particular, I think he'll play Bruno there and he'll shore up the midfield and play Casemiro, Ericsson, and one other, whether that's Amrabat coming in straight away or McTominay. That's my prediction. But McTominay for Scotland, he plays that right wing basically. I know it's sort of like a box midfield, but he plays forward, so maybe he does it. Yeah, you're all right. You don't know, but sort of all over the place at the minute. And I'm predicting a Brighton win. Saturday, innit? Saturday at 3 p.m. And then I'm predicting a Bayern win. So long for United fans. Yeah.
Yeah, really great. I think on the McTominay point, I do genuinely think he might start this game. Amrabat, I know we've signed him to play in there with Casemiro, but he left the Morocco squad with injury, albeit a precaution. But he's wouldn't have trained too much of his new teammates. He wasn't playing at Fiorentina, was he? He was sort of training alone and not going along to games and stuff, trying to force through the United move. So I'm not sure if he'll be ready for the weekend. So it might be McTominay does get a chance in there alongside Ericsson. And I think you're right that Bruno will play out there. I will go for a United win, which is completely heart over head, just to be a bit different to you two. But yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if Brighton went and picked up all three there. But what I will say for United, that will mean they've got 6 points out of 5 games with 3 losses against Arsenal, Spurs and Brighton, which would be a terrible start considering the dressing room and ownership unrest as well before we kick off Champions League midweek. How depressing. Right, so moving on. So Tottenham versus Sheffield United. So Spurs are currently in second and scoring goals for fun. Sheffield United have got 1 point versus Everton. Looks like a bit of a home banker for me. Laura, any suggestions on that one?
No, I think you're right. It should be a home banker. The two interesting things to look out for is whether he's going to continue with Son up front like he did in the last game. He scored a hat-trick, so maybe you'd think he probably will, or whether we'll have faith in Richarlison and bring him back in. But I really like that the left-sided player they've got, Solomon. He was at Fulham, wasn't he, last year? He's really good. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him keep his space and Son be up front. And then also Brennan Johnson, who signed, I think, on deadline day for Spurs. It'd be interesting to see how he's used, how many minutes he gets, and how he can kickstart his Tottenham career, because there's a good player in there, and hopefully he can excite the fans there even more and add another bow to Big Angie's already impressive career in terms of his recruitment. But I envisage a 3-0 win, and that's not to be disrespectful to Sheffield United. I think they've been all right this season. I thought they were going to be the weakest of the 3 teams that come up, and I actually think they've been the strongest so far. So fair play to them, but I would expect a comfortable victory for Big Angie's men.
Tomo?
Yeah, I completely agree. I've gone 3-0 Spurs. I just think, I know Sheffield United actually beat Tottenham, didn't they, in the FA Cup 5th round last year? So there might be a little bit of needle between the sort of Spurs players who played that fixture last year. Obviously want to get their own back or revenge or whatever you want to call it. But Sheffield United, I know what you're saying, CL. I suppose it's not a high bar, is it, being the best promoted side, because Burnley and Luton have looked shocking as well, because Sheffield United have got the worst XG in the Premier League. They've got the worst XG conceded, so that means they've conceded the most XG, which, I mean, I know you guys don't like stats, but...
Okay, can I just stop you right there, Tia? This is why I don't like stats, right? So what you've just said is we've expected Sheffield United to concede the most and score the least, but they're not bottom, right? So let's just forget about all of that, because it's a load of rubbish.
You're
quite right. They haven't been overly impressive, and they are the best of
So let me just, because obviously Statman Teagow, let me just come back at you quickly. So obviously worst XG in the Prem means that they've conceded the highest or the best quality chances to an opponent. Whether or not the opponent's taken those chances is another thing. Obviously,
it's irrelevant.
Well, yeah, but It means they're
No.
conceding high quality chances. So
there is
It means
a
they've got a
market.
good goalkeeper.
right, but anyway, listen. I predict that they concede some high quality chances against Spurs, and I've doubled.
But you wouldn't be able to tell us whether they go in or not.
And I'm doubling up on Maddison and Son in the FPL team. So yeah, I expect them to win easily. But yeah, stop coming for my stats, bruv.
Yeah, there's a place in this pod for stats. And
I don't mind stats. I don't mind stats like possession or goals, but expected quality chances against.
No, that's expected goals. It's just like you just sound like Tim Sherwood.
I'm not. What do you mean, Tim Sherwood? We're talking about fantasy, relevance, stuff that hasn't happened, stuff we might have thought would happen but didn't.
No, we're
Is that right?
talking about trends of a football match, and if a team is conceding the most XG out of everyone in the Premier League, it means they're conceding high quality chances, which means if they continue on that trend, the chances will clearly get taken more often than not.
Boys. There's two types of footy fans. You've got emotional and visual, Loro, and you've got statistical and robotic, Tomo. And there's a place for both. All right. So less said on that, the better. Right. We'll finish that there then. I will come in and say Spurs will win that 5-0. Son and Maddison braces and Kulusevski, who might be coming into my team, to notch as well. Moving on, West Ham versus Man City. So didn't expect to be saying this, but fourth versus first. West Ham have showed their blueprint of counter-attacking by beating Brighton. Probably rampant City to win again. Tomo, any thoughts on that one?
Well, I was going to reel off some stats, but now
Come
I'm a
on,
little bit
hit us.
nervous. No, look, so West Ham have won their last 3 home games against, and this is obviously going back to last season as well, but against Man United, Leeds, and Chelsea. So got a bit of form in the league there. They've drawn 2 of their last 3 games against City at home, but they did lose 2-0 last year. I think it was the opening game of the season. I think Haaland scored both on his Prem debut. And West Ham, they haven't beaten City in the last 15 league games. So, and Moyes, we all know about Moyes' record against the top clubs. It's not very good, is it? I think away from home is terrible, but they're obviously at home this weekend. I just predict City comfortable win. I know it's sort of game that plays into Moyes' style, West Ham style, because obviously they'll sit back and try and hit them on the counter with Bowen and Antonio, etc. But I just think City will be too much.
I get what you're saying, Tigo, but West Ham have actually got the highest expected Loro points against Man City this season, so I actually fancy them to win. In all seriousness, I City can't keep winning every week. Not after I've said I think this is the weakest they've been in a few years. And I think against a West Ham side who have got a lot of credit in the bank and can almost have a little bit of a free hit at it. I know David Moyes won't see it like that, but I actually quite fancy West Ham to get something at the weekend. And I'd absolutely love that to happen because, as we keep saying, it's just going to turn into a farmers league. And the more wins that Man City get, the more talk there will be about like invincibles and stuff like that. And I don't want that to happen. And West Ham are in a good vein of form and their top players are playing well. I saw Agurd has been linked, I think, with Man City recently as well in the last couple of weeks. So he's obviously a player that is impressing and he's impressed me. Jarrod Bowen's at his best at the moment. Antonio seems to have found form again. And if they can get off to a good start at home and get the crowd on their side against City, might be one where we see City drop points. So I'm not going to bet on it, but I'm going to go West Ham 3-2.
I hope you're right. That's another one for me. That fixture and Brighton Man United, both Saturday 3 p.m s. Both good games. I'm gutted I can't watch either of them, but yeah, I hope you're right, Laura, there, because like you say, it's sort of turning into a bit of a what's the word? Procession or concession?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so hopefully you're right.
Well, it's only been 4 games. Let's not get too carried away. But I'm hoping this is the one that stops the momentum for City.
Yeah, and City could have dropped points at Sheffield United, albeit a late chance squandered and late goal conceded from Sheffield United. Newcastle looked okay at the Etihad as well, so they're not looking invincible, City. But I'm sure that come 5:30 on Saturday they'll be on to 15 points from 5 games. The only thing I would say is De Bruyne out, Grealish, Kovacic, and Stones all questionable for that one. West Ham seem to have a clean bill of health, so. Hopefully they can get something there and spice the league up a bit. Boys, we'll move on. Newcastle versus Brentford. And actually, I think an important one for Eddie Howe. They do have a good run of fixtures coming up, but probably not made the start that they were envisaging. Brentford have been obviously mixed, but looking good and scoring some goals. Lauro, thoughts on that one?
I hate to say this, and I hate to this is even a thing, but there is already. I've heard it like it was on TalkSport today. I've seen it on Twitter a little bit as well. Like this is like a huge game for Eddie Howe now, an absolutely massive game that like a narrative is starting to build. Even if he's not going to get sacked if he loses against Brentford, but suddenly if you lose to Brentford at home, every single game is going to start looking harder and harder, particularly with the Champions League coming in. So I think Newcastle will win. I think it's one where we want them to, as a neutral, I want to see them stand up and go, right, no, we are a good team. We are a top 4, top 5 type Premier League team, and we brush teams like Brentford aside. I'm not quite sure Brentford are the team you choose to have a game like that, though, because they're a tricky wicket, aren't they, that are well managed, and you never know really what you're going to get from them other than blood and thunder and surprising results. They always seem to pick up points when you'd say they were the B side of the card, so to speak. So, huge game for Newcastle. It is a big game for Eddie Howe, but it shouldn't be. And I think it will also be interesting to see if Callum Wilson gets a start, because he came off the bench, didn't he, against Brighton and scored. And I don't think he started a game this year yet. With Champions League coming, might he rest Isaac? Might he bring Wilson in? Might he play both? Looking forward to watching that game. Two good sides, and hopefully for Eddie Howe's, from an Eddie Howe point of view, it'll be 3 points for Newcastle.
Yeah. Do you know he got the dreaded vote of confidence, didn't he, from the chairman, from the Saudi chairman this week? I don't know whether he was asked a specific question about Howe's future by a journalist or something, but he basically said that we're not thinking about, we totally back Eddie Howe and we're not thinking about changing manager. And I just thought, well, yeah, obviously. Yeah, but look, I think Newcastle have got a good recent record against Brentford, and obviously I think they've won the last 3 against Brentford, and it's at home. I don't predict it being a great game if I'm being honest, just for the simple fact that Eddie Howe and Newcastle just need the result. But Mbeumo's in great form, isn't he? So I think he scored 8 in his last 10 Prem games. A great little FPL pick, isn't he? Because he's playing up front at the minute, and he's in midfield on FPL. I'm predicting a score draw, but I don't really predict a great game. I think that's the 5:30 game, isn't it, on TV? So we'll see. But
yeah, I've completely agree with what Laurie said on the Eddie Howe situation, how big game it is. I've said on previous comms that I can see Newcastle making a rash decision with Howe, but he's now lost 3 in a row. Goes into this game against Brentford. The players are maybe already thinking about their Champions League debut in Milan midweek. Suddenly, if they lost that as well alongside Brentford, and they've lost 5 in a row, that could be a real issue for Newcastle and for Eddie Howe. Tomo?
Well, so the only thing I will say about that sort of, we are, the narrative around maybe they're going to make a rash decision around Eddie Howe might be because these new owners have got lofty ambitions and stuff. But actually, the way they've sort of bought in the transfer market has been quite steady. They have spent big on your Tonali's and Isaks, but they've not really got when Man City went and got Robinho, they've not got someone like that, have they? So I actually think that the ownership are a lot cleverer than we give them credit for, and I don't think inside the club there's that much pressure on him. And I hope we are all right in that respect. So even if they do lose the next couple, I think he'll be fine. But yeah, it's just one of those media things. Like I know I think you referred Talk Sport. I was listening. I think it was Jim White, right? He loves stirring the pot and likes asking the questions. And I think because of the Saudi ownership, I do think quite a lot of people have got their sort of knives out, just hoping it goes wrong, just for the simple fact that they don't like a state-owned club. I don't think he's under any sort of pressure from within the club.
No, and to be fair, we say they've lost 3 in a row, but it's Man City, Liverpool, and Brighton.
Yeah,
Like that can happen, can't it? So,
yeah, tough
but
game.
I just think I know it's Brentford tomorrow, and I don't know what the fixtures are after that. Murph said it's quite a decent run. I do think he'll be under pressure if he starts losing those games as well, though. If we're another 3 Premier League games in and he's got 1 or 2 more points, I do think forget Saudi. I think any manager of a team that finished in the top 4 last season would start to come under pressure. Do you know what I mean? So, but hopefully that doesn't happen. We're sort of preempting that. They might just go and blast Brentford away tomorrow, like they did Villa, and we'll like, well, what a team again. Hopefully that happens.
And the reality of those 3 games are all 3 losses. Yes, 1 bad performance, Brighton. The 2, it was a bad 10 minutes against Liverpool, and we all thought fine margins should have won that game really. And then the Man City game, you can lose 1-0 to Man City. And they, like Murph said, they acquitted themselves well. So, okay, 3 losses in a row, bad, but the performances haven't been that bad. Obviously, the Brighton one was a worry, but so yeah, we'll see how they go.
Yeah, we will. We'll see. Laurie, you just touched on their fixtures. They go to Sheffield United, then they have Burnley at home, then go to West Ham, then have Crystal Palace at home, then go to Wolves in their next 5 Prem games. So they're games that really they should be targeting, at least 10 points from those 5 games, if not closer to 12 to 15. As I say, the only thing to caveat that with is that they have got Milan, PSG, and Dortmund in the Champions League within that time. They also host Man City in the EFL Cup, which I know not everyone's a fan of, but it will be a big game up there. So it's just whether, and that's, I guess, where you need a big squad, but whether the players' sort of eyes start to turn to those games as opposed to the bread and butter of the Prem. And the point that I try and make about the expectations of the board is now that they're a top 4 club with Champions League revenue coming in, that will probably be the expectation now. And you've got Tottenham who've improved, Liverpool who've improved after blips. United are always obviously going to be about there. And then it looks like City, Arsenal are bankers each year. Add Chelsea in, who obviously not started great, but are spending money. Suddenly, Brighton are a good side as well. That's suddenly sort of 7-8 teams vying for the top 4, and that's where I think the board might become a bit impatient with Eddie Howe. And
the only other problem is with Newcastle. You just said about their fixtures in the Premier League there, like they've got Sheffield United, Wolves, Burnley. These are teams that are going to start needing points soon as well. Like the first few games of the season, it's almost not free hits, but teams are feeling each other out. You start to get a feel for who's good and who's not. But with every game that pack, like Burnley are going to need a win soon. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Sheffield United are going to need a win. Wolves are going to need a win. And they all might end up beating Newcastle. And Eddie Howe, I'm sorry, you're doomed. I think you're gone.
And also, another thing to add to that is most of those fixtures will be the weekend following a Champions League game. And
like a horrible Sunday.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it'll be like, well, I think our Premier League predictions were that Newcastle might struggle in the league because of those sort of games after Europe where you're on a bit of a come down and, like you say, your Burnley, Sheffield United are fighting for their lives. So, yeah, Eddie Howe's gone.
Yeah. Sorry, Eddie Howe, but it's not looking good, Brev. Boys, we'll move on. So Everton versus Arsenal, 18th versus 5th, albeit joint second on points, Arsenal. We touched on the United game and how big a win that was for Arteta before international break. However, Everton won this fixture last February 1-0 with a James Tarkowski's goal, which I think was the start of Arsenal's league wobble, actually. And I've spoken to a couple of Arsenal fans who just don't like the look of that game at 4:30 on a Sunday away at Everton. Tomo, thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I fancy Everton. I don't know why. Like you say, that game last year where Tarkowski scored the winner, they also, I think they beat Arsenal the previous season at Goodison as well. So it's just something about Goodison that Arsenal don't like. So I think Sean Dyche and Everton will sort of shithouse their way to a win there. For no other reason than just like the Premier League peak Barclays kind of vibes, basically, because if you watch both teams at the start of this, I know Arsenal haven't been at their free-flowing best, but like you said, they're joint second on points. Managed to get the win against United. Great win in the end. They beat Palace with 10 men. So yeah, look, you'd expect Arsenal to win, but for some reason, I just think Everton will get the sort of shithouse win. 1-0, I'm going again.
Lauro?
Just a complete load of waffle. Everton are really, really bad, and
Yeah,
Arsenal are really, really good. And you're right, it was the sort of start of the downfall for Arsenal last year. But that game where they won last year, I think, was also Sean Dyche's first game. And sometimes you get that manager bounce, don't you, when they first come in and they sort of galvanise the place and everyone's excited and it's a new start. They haven't got that this year. They've used that one up last year, and it sounds like they used it up the year before as well.
yeah, but
They've got
the Beto bounce this year.
Yeah, they do have
Beto. The Beto bounce. Well, Beto starts scoring because I'm not being funny, boys. They are absolutely atrocious, and they're coming up against one of the best sides in Europe. And Teagow has just predicted Everton to win based on literally nothing.
Well,
so
no.
I'm going Arsenal route, and this is the most confident I've been in a fixture in the Premier League this year. I don't care if it's at Goodison Park, Badison Park, wherever you want to play it. It's going to be 4-0 Arsenal and Sean Dyche under even more pressure.
Well, I am probably going to side with Tomo on this. I think that the Beto bounce might come through. I think Arsenal have been close to losing a couple games this year. And yeah, I think you saw what Beto was all about at the Keep Moat against Doncaster. I heard his performance. I heard his performance at Bramall Lane described as lively, and I fancy him to notch the winner in a 1-0 win against Arsenal. And yeah, I think that will be the way that Super Sunday's rounded off, with Dyche arms aloft or arm in arm with Beto, celebrating the first of many wins with Beto notching. So yeah, 2 Everton wins there and an Arsenal rout. So mixed reviews, but we will see with that one. Boys, we'll just touch on the rest of the Premier League action. So Bournemouth versus Chelsea. I think Bournemouth on 2 points, Chelsea on 4. Neither club made the start that they'd have wanted to, but I think quite a much needed win there for Chelsea for Pochettino. If they can go and win away there. Monday Night Football is Forest versus Burnley. Again, Burnley absolutely desperate for a win, but Forest have obviously got Womney up front, who's a cheat code, and Tomo's boy Morgan Gibbs-White. Villa host Palace. So yeah, Villa picked up a couple of decent results. Now Palace have 2. Interested in that game. I've actually brought Diaby into my fantasy football to go alongside Ollie Watkins, who I cannot stress enough. He's on his last chance in my FPL side, but he's got to start scoring soon. And it's almost one of them where I know when I take him out, he's going to score. So I'm just sat there with him in there. But you're really, really on thin ice, Ollie, if you're listening. And then probably the worst game of the weekend, Fulham at home to Luton. Luton obviously desperate for a win as well, but Fulham should go on and win that, but aren't looking particularly great themselves either. We'll move on to the Championship. Laura, I'll come to you on this one because midday on Sunday, I believe Leeds go to Millwall. Now, I think Leeds had a massive result, didn't they, at Ipswich, and then you predicted an absolute rout against Sheffield Wednesday, which didn't materialise. But what's your thoughts about what looks a tricky fixture at Millwall?
I don't think that looks a tricky fixture. I think this is the start now for Leeds and Farker. We've got the first month of the season out the way. I won't say or just again and take the mick out of our manager, because this is the time of the season that we need to kick on and put that run together. Leicester and Southampton, someone's going to take points off each other in that fixture on Friday night, and I think Leeds are going to go to the Den and make a bit of a statement. I'm not saying it's not a tricky fixture, because I don't think Millwall are very good, but I think we're an elite side now in the Championship, and I think this should be the start of a run of games where we pick up an awful lot of points and hopefully score an awful lot of goals as well. And I'm looking at Joel Pirro to come up and score a hat-trick of the Den on Sunday. So looking forward to watching it. It's on Sky. Be interesting to see who plays all over the park. Is he going to stick with Ayling, or will Jed Spence come in? Will Pirro remain in that 10 position, or will they stick him up top and bring someone else in behind him? Really looking forward to it, expecting goals, expecting a win for Leeds United, and hopefully, like I said, to kickstart some good momentum going forward into the season.
Yeah, if Leeds win that, I've heard murmurs and rumours of the pressures of the pressure building on Gary Rowett at Millwall for some reason. I know he did well last year. Did they get into the playoffs or just miss out, or was it
Just missed out on the last day?
Yeah, and I know there's been calls for him from the Millwall fans to get the boot, which I was surprised to hear, to be honest. And obviously, if they lose at home to dirty Leeds, the pressure might start to build even more.
Yeah, I didn't realise you were so in tune with the Millwall fan base and everything that goes on at the Den. But yeah, I'd be quite surprised at that. I think they're sat in like mid-table at the moment, aren't they? And like Millwall to just miss out on the playoffs again. No disrespect, I wouldn't expect them to be up and around the upper echelons of that league. So he's obviously been doing a good job there. And sometimes managers can just come under pressure because people get bored. And it's more of just like they're ready for the next cycle and it to be freshened up a little bit. And maybe that's what he's fallen victim of. But if he is under pressure, I feel sorry for him because I think he's going to get a drumming on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's more the style of play that they're not happy with. And like you say, that comes into the whole board situation and whether or not sort of a new manager, they just like want the new manager bounce. It's almost like a little microcosm of 2023 society. You just want new things all the time. And
just an endless cycle of bringing a new manager in every 3 games where you get the new manager bounce. You go through 12 of them, but have an invincible season.
This is the danger. This is the danger. I've said this before. I think a manager in the Championship is more important than any other league. And it's really, really difficult to find good ones, particularly good ones that can have a little bit of longevity. So you can sack Gary Rowett and bring, I don't know, Lamucci in, or Labucci, whatever his name was, that got sacked at Cardiff at the end of the season, and you might win a couple of games, and you might, play a little bit of tick-attack or a little bit of Genga press or whatever the modern thing is now. But all of a sudden, you find yourself at the bottom of the table, and you think, "Oh, hang on a minute, why did we sack Rowett, who almost got us into the playoffs, and Millwall, a couple of games away from the Premier League last year?" So, if you're listening, owners at Millwall, I'd stick by your man.
Yeah. Okay. We'll look out for Leeds' result there. Laurie, you touched on it, but I think Southampton host Leicester on Friday Night Football, which obviously last year would have been a Prem fixture. It's 3rd v 7th here. Leicester on 12 points, 1 point behind Preston, and Southampton on 10 points, sort of just outside the playoffs. That looks like quite a big fixture already for both those sides.
I think it's a massive fixture for Russell Martin as well. I said at the start of the season, I think there will come a time early on where he's going to have to ride out some pressure, some poor results, and it's going to be, can he implement his style and winning football quick enough before he gets sacked? Because time is not an easy commodity to get when you're a football manager. And I just think they lost 5-0 to Sunderland in the last game. They've had 2 weeks off. Now they've got to go and play Leicester. I think like this could be the start of the end at Southampton already for Russell Martin, and I don't mean that disrespectfully.
Do you know what's mental about that though is that obviously if they go and win that, they're above Leicester, and
I mean, I think they've pretty much won every other game, to be fair. So maybe I'm being harsh, but I just feel like this might be. They lost 5-0 to Sunderland. If they get beat handsomely against Leicester, suddenly their next fixture will look really tough, whoever that's against, and then it can start snowballing. I don't want that to happen. I like the Saints; they're a good football club. I'd like to see them back in the Premier League, but I've just got a feeling something like that might be afoot.
Do you know what? A weird thing about that sort of fixture, a little weird quirk, I think, is it's like a bit of a swing fixture because obviously Leicester lost at home to Hull last match, didn't they? And we spoke about them. Obviously, they won their previous 4, the first games of the season, but they've not looked convincing. And I've just had a look at the table there. They've only scored 7 in 5 games. So something's not quite, even though they're winning the games, something's not quite clicking sort of in the attacking areas. So if they go and lose, all of a sudden it's like, well, are Leicester and is Maresca under pressure, which is mental to say because they won their first 4 games. But it's one of those swing fixtures that if Leicester win, okay, great start to the season. If Southampton win, it's like a bit of pressure.
Yeah, sliding doors moments, isn't it, with games like that? And, it could potentially be a catalyst for Russell Martin to go on and put a run of fixtures together. But as Loro says, could be beginning of the end after a big loss at Sunderland to go and lose again and just drop a few more points, already the fans will start to be thinking, is this the right person to take us forward?
The point with Russell Martin is that I'm not trying to dig him out, but he's formed a very, very good managerial reputation based on possession football, right? But he hasn't actually done much. Like, he didn't get MK Dons promoted in League One, and he didn't get Swansea anywhere near, or he didn't get them into the playoffs in the Championship. So I think the question mark over his head is, can you go that next step and actually do something? And when you couple that with Southampton, who have got in the top 3 squads in the league, and all the expectations on you, how much patience and how much trust are the board and the club going to have with you? And that's my worry with him. And when you get beat 5 at Sunderland, and then you go into Leicester, and then so on, that's what I'm saying. I think he's a good manager, but sometimes possession can be a little bit fooling, and it can be 20 passes between your goalkeeper and your centre halves, rather than actually attacking football and getting results from it. I'm not saying that's happening. That's just my worry for him, just to summarise my feelings towards it. It's no disrespect. It's just a feeling I've got when I saw that managerial appointment in the summer.
And just a quick one on that, because I'm now getting quite excited about this game. My missus messaged me earlier today, eyeing up a movie night tomorrow before the Prem returns, obviously. And I'm going to have to sack her off, I think, because that's a Friday night game, innit, on Sky. We'll have to watch that now.
Just do what I say, mate. Just start the film, and then as soon as you've fallen asleep, turn over to footy. It's a constant battle when there's Friday night footy on at my house. Boys, right, we'll move on. Quick little look ahead to League One and League Two. So League One, first place Stevenage host Charlton, and second place Bolton go to Reading. Fixture of the weekend there looks to be Derby versus Portsmouth. I know we seem to say this every week, but looks like an important one for Paul Warne to get all 3 in. But he seems to be struggling in every single game that he has. Always seems to be. Yeah, Paul Warne could do with all 3 here. But
he's always name checked as well. It's always Paul. We don't mention any other League One manager. Sorry, Paul. It's just because we know him from Yeovil.
Yeah, he cost me a fair few fivers as well, betting on score first at 11-1 back in the day. But there we go. So yeah, please, Paul, get all 3, because otherwise I'll have to learn the new Derby manager's name. And then League Two. So first place Gillingham host Morecambe, who are in 14th. Friday night football, actually, alongside Southampton, Leicester, is Notts County go to Salford. Salford haven't started great. They're in 18th and Notts County are second. But interesting that that's a Friday night game. So if that's on TV, just flicker between that and the Saints Leicester game. And then third place Mansfield are at Colchester at 20th, who will be looking to win that fixture as well. Laura, we'll move on to Yeovil. So I think last time we did the pod was last Monday, and we were a day out from going to a trip out to Weston-super-Mare. Yeovil have had 2 games since then and have won both in 5-goal thrillers. So just talk us through them.
Yeah, they won both 3-2. Weston-super-Mare away. For the first time this season, or for the first time in ages, we went 2-0 up early on, much to the delight of the 850 travelling fans, I think, to the stadium that night, which was nice to see. And you just thought, is this finally the game that we get that sort of walk in the park and we go and thump someone? But no, took the foot off the gas a little bit, allowed them back into the game, went 2-1, then we went 3-1 up, and then they scored a goal in the last minute, and there was some nervy extra time. But thankfully, it was all about getting the win that game, because we haven't won away, I think, since like February or something, when we beat Dagenham in the conference. So nice to get away 3 points. And then in the scorching heat on Saturday, we turned over Eastbourne Borough, who are probably the best footballing team I've seen at this level so far, watching Yeovil this season. And they're probably feeling quite unlucky not to come away with anything. But old cliche, sign of a good team, isn't it, that you can you win games when you're not possibly playing your best. And I'm actually getting a little bit excited for Yeovil, because I feel like we're sit 3 points off top, and I think a lot of the other teams above us, like your Baths and your Tauntons and even like your Worthings, I think they're having like their purple patch already, and we're up with them, and we've not really got going yet. So my prediction of Yeovil win the league certainly hasn't changed. If anything, it's got stronger. What did you make of that? You went to Western away, didn't you? What did you make of the football, Murph?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of negativity with Yeovil fans about the style of play and things like that. But I think if you offered most fan bases sort of averaging 2-3 goals a game and winning more games than you're losing and drawing, I really can't see the issue there. some of the big names are starting to score goals. Some of the lesser names that we thought maybe wouldn't be involved, like Jordan Young, are now playing really well. Josh Ower's played really well. So I can't really see what the issue is with the fan base about the style of football. I don't know what style of football they want to go to, which scoring is better than scoring 3 goals and winning games. Tomo?
Just a quick one. I was gonna, like, it feels like the relegation last season was like the best thing that could have happened to Yeovil. And it's like the age-old question, in it, of like you sort of yo-yo clubs like Sheffield United, your Burnleys, etc., etc. Would you rather be in the Championship a level below, or in Yeovil's case, the National South, a level below, where you're winning games, you're playing good football, and you boys, you go into the games and you're enjoying it, as opposed to when you went there last year in the conference and it was obviously terrible? Do you think this is sort of like a classic case of getting relegated? I know we've been relegated quite a lot recently, Yeovil, but is it a classic case of Yeovil, the relegation was the best thing that could have happened to us, or?
No. Like, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, sometimes you'd rather be winning games, but that's all right if we got relegated from League One to League Two, and then we started winning games and we were winning that league. But the National League South is an absolutely ridiculous level for Yeovil to be playing at. The reason that the change in fortunes and the complete atmosphere shift has been because we had an absolute cretin rodent of an owner that was trying to, relinquish the club of all of its history and the fans of the club, basically, and turn it into a housing estate, has gone. And we've been bought out by a local businessman that has a lot more heart and passion towards the football club and is pumping some money into it and buying some good players and got a good manager and made it stadium improvements, made the match day experience a lot better. And that's what the crest of the wave I think that we're riding at the moment. And like Murph said, there's been a little bit of negativity around some of the football we've played, but I just think that's because we're in the National League South and people are thinking, why aren't we winning 6 and 7-0 every week? We've scored the second most goals in the league and with 3 points off top, and we haven't really got going yet. These are all good signs. But of course, after 9 games, every single game, if you draw a game after 6, suddenly the weight that's on that is massive. Whereas if we were 5 points clear at the top and we draw a game in December, no one's calling for the manager then. So I would call for patience.
Yeah, Murph, actually, I wanted to ask you a question, because I know it's the FA Cup qualifier, isn't it, this weekend, and we're playing Stoneham at Hewish Park, and Stoneham are in your league, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we've actually got them on Saturday, so I'll be reaching out to Josh Staunton and Mark Cooper for any tips for our midweek battle. But yeah, Stoneham are one of the few teams left in our league, I think, in the FA Cup. We had like the extra preliminary round. We actually went out to a club managed by Rowan Vine. If you boys have done his Under the Cosh, you'll know he's a bit of a nutter. He managed the side that we went out to, but obviously I was injured, so didn't travel. Stoneham are going to be right up there in our league, got a really big budget for the standard that we play, albeit it's 3 divisions below Yeovil. So I think that Cooper might use that as an opportunity to give a few players some minutes who maybe don't start, but at the same time, I think Cooper's come out and said it's a bit of a lose-lose for Yeovil, isn't it? You're expected to thrash aside 3 divisions below you when you're already in regional football, but they're going to be so up for it, and you'll find that players drop down and play the level that Stoneham are at because the money's so good, alongside having a part-time job, and some of the funds that get chucked at it at that standard is just ridiculous. So I don't think that's an absolute foregone conclusion, but I'm obviously not able to go because I'll be playing myself. But I'll be really interested to hear Laura's thoughts about what a team at my standards like when coming up against kind of a fully fit Yeovil side, now that they've kind of through pre-season starting to pick up some results. So yeah, obviously want Yeovil to win, but
But Murph, put yourself in. Obviously, Stoneham in your league. I know it's a little bit different because it's your local club, but how would you be feeling? Because they're at your level, so these guys are similar kind of footballers to you. If you were playing at Hewish Park on Saturday, are you excited now? Are you nervous?
I think so.
Testing yourself?
I think so, yeah. I mean, obviously, I've already been and won at Hewish Park in the High Holborn final, and as you saw, I hit the bar from the halfway line, but don't need to talk about that. But no, I mean, with Yeovil, it's obviously a local side, but at that level, they're a huge club. They're almost like, a football league side. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of an equivalent of someone in there. If we were playing down at Torquay as an example, if Sherborne were down there, I just can't picture how buzzing you'd be. They'd be training this week. They've probably had a fixture since they found out and been not wanting to get injured. They're probably all pesting the manager like hell as well, just messaging him, seeing how his week's going and stuff like that, because you'd be absolutely gutted to not be in the starting 11 or squad. But I guess it's a complete free hit for them. They'll have some really decent players, and they'll just be thinking to themselves, chance to go and play in front of a crowd of probably a couple of thousand. As say, complete free hit. I just think they'll be absolutely buzzing, and they must just be so looking forward to giving an account of himself on Saturday. So yeah, I'm very jealous of that. I'll be down in Brockenhurst instead in the New Forest trying to get all three, but there we go. But yeah, so good luck to Stoneham, but obviously want the Glovers to progress in the cup there. Boys, we'll finish with, as I say, everyone's favourite podcast feature, which is Spin the Wheel. So round two, Tomo, you got 8 points for Brian and Buemo. Lauro, you picked up 7 points for James Maddison. I got a paltry 2 points for Raheem Sterling. So Lauro, you top the table now on 10 points. Tomo, you're on 8 points and I'm on 3. I've spanned the wheel already and it's defenders this week. So I'm going to go first, sitting bottom, and then come to Tomo, who's hopefully given it a bit of attention this week. And then Lauro will finish with you. I'm going to go for Spurs defender, who's in my fantasy team, Udogie. I think it's Destiny. Clean sheet and assist for him, I think. Home to Sheffield United. We've spoken about the fixture already. I fancy Spurs to win 4-5-0. I think the forwards will all be in on the act, but hoping that he can be overlapping, get a couple crossing and get an assist, and then the clean sheet for hopefully a double figure haul. So that's where I'm going to go. Tomo, you can have any defender, but obviously not Brentford.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for a defender who had an absolute stinker in the last game week, and that is Matty Cash. He conceded 3 and obviously scored one of those goals. So yeah, he had a stinker, but he's at home to Palace this week. Villa have only had one home game this season so far, and they played Everton and they won 4-0. And I think, he obviously got the clean sheet there, and he's obviously scored a couple already. So I just think he'll get a clean sheet and he'll get a brace. So that's why I'm picking him.
Solid. Lauro?
I'm going to go for a gentleman that goes by the name of Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Okay.
Reason being is he's always the top scoring defender on fantasy football, has been for the last 4 or 5 years, so it's a no-brainer. I'm surprised no one else has picked him up.
No, fair enough. I can't see any issues with that. I'd heard a couple of fitness issues, that he's questionable with the muscle injury, which is why me and Tomo didn't look there, but you can take that gamble. Right, boys, that's all we got time for. We'll wrap up there. We'll be back on Monday where we'll review all of the weekend's action and look ahead to the start of the European campaigns for the top English sides. Cheers all.
Cheers.